Today we'll be working through page 2 of the Class 22 lecture notes, which we didn't finish on Monday. When we were making the model in place objects on Monday, each time that we'd create one, we had to pick a category for it and then give it a name. A similar operation with the loadable or reusable families. And I said, if something's furniture, we need to tell Revit it's furniture, so it will have the right line weight and that kind of stuff. But really, even more important is that Revit will then know that it's in a category. And if we want to turn the furniture category off, just like turning a layer off in AutoCAD, we can know that if we turn all the furniture off, that the thing that we just drew will turn off as well. So when we're making 3D families in the Familiy editor, which are the ones that we'll save to disk and can share and pass around and use in further projects, and also include them in the furniture and other schedules that Revit automatically generates. We do that in a Familiy editor, which is a little different from this project editor. And the process to create a new family, let's just say a box to start with. We go to File, New, click Family, or File, New, wait till that pops up and pick Family. Family creates a set of custom components to use in projects. And I need to make sure to get to my English Imperial Family templates. And I think what I'm going to make is a cat climbing box, which isn't furniture. It's not floor. It really fits best into the entourage category, which is, books on the table, trash cans, just stuff like that. Entourage, window dressing. So we're out of the Revit model right now. We're working on a separate file that we can then load into our Revit model, but we're in a separate little editing environment, and all we do here is make the families. And what we're seeing here is a plan view called the reference level. It's not really like a level 1. It doesn't correspond to a floor because this might be something that sits on tables or hangs down from ceilings. But we're looking down at a plan view where we see 2 reference planes, and at their intersection is the point, like the base point in an AutoCAD block, which is where the cursor is when you're placing this object back in the model. I think what we'll make is a box with a hole through it this way and a hole through it that way that the cats can climb through. So how big should a cat climber be? Let's make it 3 feet tall. Okay. We're drawing in real units. So if we're making something that's 3 by 3 by 3, we'll make it 3 by 3 by 3 feet. And what was the tool that we used yesterday to make things extrude from the floor? Extrusion, all right. So extrusion. And I would like it to be centered here. I'll show you a good way to center it. So I'll pick my rectangle tool and I'll go to 3 by 3 feet. And I would like to move this so it's centered on the intersection of the axes. So I'm going to grab these guys. And it's going to be basically sort of 2 moves. One is to move from the midpoint here down. And the other is to move from the midpoint here over. So centered. And we can give it its height right here as well. I'll make that 3 feet as well, just to. At that point, then I hit that green check mark, and it's made. Do the axes have to be exactly in the middle? Well, for this, no. Get it close. I mean, a cat climber is not too concerned with exactly where it is, but somewhere in the middle of it. We don't want the point that you're moving it with to be out here somewhere. And once we see this in 3D, we can select it and make it higher or whatever we want to do with it. It's entirely malleable at this point. So how do we drill a vertical hole, let's say 2 vertical holes through that? The question is, based on the tools we used last class, what are at least 2 ways we could drill some vertical holes through here? See if it comes back. Anytime that we've created those magenta boundary outlines, whether it's for a horizontal object or the profile of a wall, we can select the object, go back to Edit Extrusion, and if you remember, then anything that we draw inside here will become a void hole through it. So I'm going to create maybe a couple of circular holes. Vertical ones we can just do in the same, define them in the same plane that the original object was designed in, and then say, okay. And then there that is. See down through to the bottom of it. If I want to hold going, let's say from this side through to over here, going horizontally, I can't edit that in the same way because that's all happening down on the ground plane. So, Cherokee, what was your suggestion? You do a void. How would you suggest I do a void? Let's say I want to go from this face straight on through and out the other side.
I would stop on the face and drag it.
Okay, and how do I create it on that face? Okay, so we could create void extrusion. Got a set work plane. Okay, let's do a different shape. Let's do a polygon or something, hexagon. So there's that. And it knows it's a void. And a void knows to project itself back into the face of the thing it was drawn on. We can make it any length we want. I'm just start making it a foot deep. Just to illustrate a point here. Say okay. And we can see that just went back in a foot and didn't go all the way through the climber. But if we select it, we can grab a grip and pull it on through. Then we have this fascinating kitty habitat that they can, let's do shaded view. So they can fall down in the hole, they can crawl through. This is all covered with carpet so they can do whatever they want. So I'm wondering if this little hole intersects with this guy. And it's hard to tell from here, and it's sort of hard to tell from this way. So I think I'll just go into a wireframe view. And be able to see straight through. And I see, oh, we got a little bit of intersection there between those two. You know, looking from this direction. If you select an object and then you shift and drag your mouse, it'll rotate around that object, keeping it centered on the screen, which is a very handy way to do all this. So I think that's not really enough, as far as I'm concerned, enough clearance for my cat to get through. He's kind of heavy. Actually, he's dead, but he was heavy. He was a dear cat. So I want to move this hole farther this way so it lines up better with the hexagonal guy. So to do that, I'll pick it, edit extrusion, move this over. Oh, it's still sort of there, shaded. That's cool. And there I've got better. Okay. So this is obviously not a hugely complicated or accurate piece of stuff. It's just meat for our exercise. But here's the difference between the model in place elements we created on Monday and the families we created in the Familiy editor today. First, we're going to save this with its own name onto the hard drive. File, save. And I have on my computer, I just have a folder called Revit Families. That's all the stuff that I've made. Here, I think I'll put it into these. I should make a new folder here in Documents. Right click, new folder. So I'll make the folder, click there to make it the current folder, and call this Cat Climber. Okay, so that's now a separate file on disk. It's not yet back in the model. To do that, we have two options. One is to load it into the project, but to keep it available here just on a tab. And the other would be to load it into the current project and then close it here in this editor. And that's what I'm going to do right now, load into project and close. If I pick that without having saved it, I would have been prompted to save this with a name. So you can see that the point I used to locate it is at that center point where those two axes crossed. And I'll put it out here next to the chair. A couple things I want to do is make sure it's actually on the floor. So I'm just going to make a camera view over here. Yeah, looks great. This may be a little large. Who's the important mammal in this house, the people or the cats? Anyway, so there it is. It has a name, cat climber, and a category, entourage. Right now, that's like my current component. So if I want to put one in a bedroom, and I go to architecture component, place a component, just the way you place the appliances or base cabinets, same deal. Place a component, it shows up there, and I can place it anywhere I want and rotate it around or whatever. So that's the most basic process. Make something as complex or simple as you wish, give it a name, save it to disk, and then load it into your model. If you decide after seeing it in place that it needs more work, you know, this is awfully boring. I want to see our heads poking out of here while we're having breakfast or whatever. We can always just go to select it, go to edit family, just like edit type, just it's a family. It's sort of the next notch up. Edit family. And I'm going to put one going through this way, which will be void form, void extrusion, set the work plane to there, click, draw a shape. Say okay. And maybe it only goes part way back, I don't know. Doesn't come out the other side. Whatever kind of geometry you want to have going on in there. And then having done that, I need to save it to disk again, because this is our new improved version 2. So I'll say load into project and close. I'll just say that. Say I've forgotten to save it. Do you want to save the changes to cat climber? And RFA means Revit family, so file type, as opposed to RVT, which is the model itself. I'll say yes. It already exists on disk. Are you sure you want to replace the existing file? Yep. And then once we're back in the model, it says we've already got one there. Do you truly want to replace the one that's here with the new one with the hole through there? I'll say yes, overwrite the existing version. And there it is. So we can repeat that as many times as you need until the object is what you want. I was working on a hospital project for an Air Force medical base, and I was basically modeling all the medical equipment they had to put in there to be sure that the different pieces of equipment wouldn't interfere with each other. And what we did first was make just the first version of almost anything would be a rectangular cuboid as big as the thing could be, and put that on the wall or on the floor, wherever, to make sure it wasn't going to bang into anything else. And then over the course of time, we come back and refine those and put the dials and whatever on it that it had to have. But you can think of families as something in a continual state of improvement. So what I'd like to do for an exercise together is a furniture family, a table, what do I do first? File, new, family. English Imperial, this is definitely furniture. It's much easier to see these all in a list or just in a row instead of as icons. We have a choice. We can see them as thumbnails, but it's hard to see. I suggest changing views to say list is like that. And you can scroll over. I prefer detailed, where it's just one long scrolling line to go down. Anyway, furniture. Okay. So we start a new family in a plan view. Where would you suggest we start? Let's make the top of the table. Let's make it a rectangle first and then round off the edges. We're not worried about materials or anything. We're just doing solid, lumpy things. We're doing rectangles. And I think I'll do the same thing of starting at the corner and making it 2 feet by 4 feet. Here's where you sort of have a choice of where you want the center of the axis to be. I think, again, with a table that's can be randomly placed in space, I think the middle of it makes good sense. So again, we can move, window them, window them, move them from like the middle of this point over to that axis. And from the middle of this point down to there. Right now it's sitting down on the ground. We would like the tabletop to start 16 inches off the floor and end at 18 inches off the floor. So over here in properties, and I really suggest you have your properties palette turned on all the time. You just got to have it, especially in this editing mode. So I say we start this at 16 inches and go up to 18 inches. And for inches, you can use either 2 single quotes or the double quote. I usually use 2 singles because I don't have to do the shift. And let's see what that looks like. Beautiful. It's a little hard to tell where it is in space in terms of the floor or anything. If we go into it, any of the elevation views, we can see it relative to its reference level, which is when we place it, this point right here, where those 2 vertical axes and this reference level meet, is called the placement point of the family. When we're placing right there, it'll be on the floor, and so the table is just sitting, the legs are sitting right on the floor. Back in plan view, let's put the radiuses on the corners. I can't just radius this object. I need to drill down into this object. Edit extrusion is what we always do with all these guys to get the magenta lines to show up. And then just as we did on Monday, the fillet arc tool. We know we want those to be 3-inch radiuses. So we'll check the radius option here on the option bar and say 3 inches. And then we can pick this line and pick this line, and those are radius. And it's going to keep on radiusing until we hit escape. So I'll just keep going around. Okay. Looking good. The legs, we said, are 1.5 inch diameter and symmetrically placed 3 inches in from the corners. So here, I think I'll do some construction lines to locate where I want the centers of those to be using just detail lines. And here they're called symbolic lines. We can leave them here as part of the object or erase them afterwards. We'll erase these afterwards. Just going to go up here some random distance. Annotate symbolic line. I'm just going to offset each of these 3 inches. And then create a leg right here to start with. And that will again be an extrusion. circular. Place it there. And what we're seeing there is we can click over here and put in a radius, or we can just drag this out and type 3/4 inch to make the 1.5 inch diameter. And this leg, because a lot of times we're doing things that are quite similar from one step to the next, Revit's remembered the extrusion heights of the table. We don't want that. We want the leg to start at 0 on the floor and go up to that 1'4", 16 inches. And we can see this in 3D as well, what's happening. So that there's that circle drawn. And when we check it, up it goes. It's kind of a pain to go through all that offsetting and measuring and diametering stuff. If we go back into our floor plan view, and if I select this leg, we can simply mirror it about this center axis to get it placed over here. And that's another really good reason to have everything has any sort of symmetry to it, centered on these axes, because these make it very easy to deal with stuff. I'll pick that. We have these two ways to mirror things. One, if there's an existing line, we can just pick the green one. That's what we can do. Just pick it, and there's that. Oops. The mistake I made was not checking, sorry. Select it, mirror. I didn't check the copy box. It just flipped it over to the other side. So I pick copy and pick this, and there it is. Get rid of the lines. And now I can mirror both of those two down along the horizontal line, and the legs will be complete. Click the first one, control click the second, mirror, pick. Control sort of has a copy function. When you control drag, it'll make a copy of something, and control click, it'll keep picking up pieces as it goes. So that sort of two-stage mirroring is really common for lots of furniture pieces that you'll be working on. So now that we have this lovely thing, we need to save it to disk so we can share it with people. And that's File, Save. Again, I'm going to make sure it's in that same Revit Families folder so I can find it again. We'll call this 24 by 48 table. And now I can load this into the project and close. And it'll keep placing it until you hit escape. Now, like I realized in my 3D view, that's really a pretty boring little table. I would like to make another version of it, or actually a whole nother table, but using this as a starting point, that has legs that taper from round at the bottom to square at the top, and that slant in a little bit. Let's do this. Let's pick this guy, edit family, because I'm going to start with this. And right away, I'm going to save it with a new name, just so I don't mess with my old one. So new File, Save As, Family, Coffee Table with Slanted Legs. Let's get rid of these legs. We can't reuse or modify them because they're extrusions, and we're going to want a different kind of shape. So what do we call it when something starts with one shape and ends up with another? A blend, correct. And to put this together, it's easiest to do it in plan. That 3 inch, this is a 3 inch radius. And it turns out that 3 inches is right at the center point of that radius. So let me try that. Now we're going to create a blend. Revit always starts a blend with what it thinks of as the bottom. So we'll start with a circle. And if I type SC for snap center, it'll snap to the center of that arc. And they say 1/2 inch diameter round. That's tiny. So 1/4 inch radius, be very delicate. We might change that. So there's the bottom. And then now we need to edit the top, which will be a rectangle. I'm going to make it significantly larger so we really see what's going on here. Let's say 1 inch by 1 inch. And now we finished doing the top. And then over here, we can tell it the heights to be. So I'm going to say that the first end, the first one we drew, is at 0. And the second one we drew is at 16 inches. See if that looks about right. Oh, it's the wrong one. It looks about right. It's kind of stylish. And then again, I'll do the mirroring thing to make 4 of these. Select it, mirror on the axis, select, select, pick both of them and mirror them on that one. Well, this is sort of a clunky table on top of little tiny legs, but so be it. One last thing I want to do is put a rounded edge on this. And that can be any shape we really want. So what do we call a shape that follows a curved path? A sweep.
Extra points for Katie.
A difference in how we make this compared to last time. Previously, we had just drawn a line on the floor.
For the custom countertop.
Here, to define our path, we're going to pick these 3D edges and tell it to draw it there. So it'll be like attached to the edges of the table wherever it goes. So I'm going to go back to, I guess, a hidden line here just for fun. I'm going to create a sweep. And previously with that countertop, we had drawn the path, sketched it. Here I'm going to pick a path.
Which can actually follow a 3-dimensional path.
But we're not going to do that right now. Pick a path. We just start picking these all the way around till we're done. And as with all these, when you're finished one phase of a project, of a design, you hit the green check mark. And we could go probably on disk or on the drive here. There's a bunch of profiles we could do, wavy ones or elliptical ones, but we're just going to edit our own, create our own. And now we're drawing on this plane the shape that we want to go around the whole thing. So I'm going to do it simple and pick the start and radius arc and click here and just drag it out. You know, one inch will give me a semicircle there. And then I also need the line connecting them so that we now have a bounded shape as we had before that can be swept all the way around the object. So say I'm done defining the shape, we hit the check mark. And then to actually create the object, we click it once again. Now, wowie zowie, we have that. And we have one last option here, which is whether we want to keep that edge looking like it's a separate thing, or if we want that to merge
with the tabletop.
If we want it to look like a separate material, or if it's the same material. Let's say the same material. And here we have a new tool, which is join. which takes any two objects and turns them into one object. So I'll say join this, and then they become one guy. So since I've already named this coffee table with slanted legs, I can just save it with Control S. So it's saved to disk. Then I know this is good. I don't want to come back to it. I'll just load it into project
And close the Family editor.
and we'll have the other kind of table. I think we'll wrap up with doing an entourage family at number D on page 2. Pretty typical use of a revolve would be for making a big planter. And I want to do some fairly specific dimensions here so we can be sure of how all this works and get the kind of control we need. I want it to be 24 inches high, 8 inches at the base from the edge to the center line, 12 inches at the top from the outside to the center line, but the center line doesn't actually touch. We're going to sort of leave that hole the way we did in the demonstration on Monday. So the edge of the hole will be a ½ inch off the center line. And for this, we're going to get into not the plan view to start with of the Family editor, but into, let's say, the front elevation view. So File, New, Family, Entourage, just stuff in the house. Pretty much every family starts looking down at the thing in plan view. I want to get into an elevation view, let's just say looking at it from the front, where in effect its floor level is right here. And maybe I just start by making a 12 by 24 inch rectangle to get the overall size of things, and then work in from there. So this will be a revolve. We're defining the profile that will be swept around the axis.
There's not an object here yet, one of whose faces I can choose as a plane to draw on, but
each of those green axes is a reference plane, which are named. So we say, pick a plane, and it's the one that goes, so we're looking at the front of this thing, and we want to draw on the plane that's going from right to left. So the bottom one here. Okay.
oops, got that backwards.
Okay. It doesn't matter what direction we're looking at this from. We'll look at it from the left. So create a revolve. Sorry, get into my lines here. I'm going to just start with the half of it, which is altogether 1 foot by 2 feet. So that's sort of this corner out here, just to give me a good reference point for it. And then I'll sort of work back and down from there. I'm going to make that lip, let's say 3 inches. So I'm doing a lot of copying and offsetting for a while until I get around to ending up with my final lines. I'm not going to try to do it perfectly to start with. Offset 3 inches there. I know I want to come out 8 inches here, at the bottom. So that's where that needs to be. Over there somewhere. And then I'm going to use trim just to define the outside, what's my outside perimeter, or trim. And then lastly, offset everything 1/2 inch to get the thickness of the thickness of the pot. And then a bunch of trims. And then once you're at that point, once you have a continuous profile,
That can be revolved.
you hit OK.
Now we need to pick the axis to revolve around.
Defining the axis line, you can draw it or pick it. So if you know you've got this right here, this little arrow with the green line always means you can pick an edge instead of drawing it. Pick it, pick it. Okay.
So to finish up,
We'll save this, give it a name, and insert it into our living room. File, save as, family, planter, pot, 24-inch. Load into project and close. So I think the assignment will be, the challenge there will be looking at the things that you've, either in your apartment or something you can get back to, and well, actually by the time you photographed it, you should be okay. Maybe get some measurements just to know more or less how big it is, but to have to start thinking about it in terms of,
how am I going to make this thing? For instance, how would we make this?
what tool am I going to use? Which 3D tool? Extrusion, yeah, that's one way. I can think of three. Let's think. We could draw a circle with a circle inside it and extrude it, and we get that. Another would be what we just
Did with the planter,
which is a shape and an axis of revolution and spin it, and then we get that same shape.
we could create a solid cylinder and then a smaller void cylinder and subtract the void from the solid.
Or we have a circle
And a skinny rectangular shape.
a sweep and sweep that around that way. So that's 4 ways. That's all I can think of. So to some extent, that's what you're comfortable with using, what you can sort of visualize, what information you have. Haven't done a sweep yet. Let's do a sweep. File, new. No, not new project, new family. File, new family. Entourage. We're going to do a sweep. And what I know first is the path. And I'm going to say that this is 3 inches inside diameter. So 1.5 inch circle, 1.5 inches. This was sketch because there's nothing here to pick. Inch and a half, like that. And then I'm through with drawing the path. So I think I'll go to my 3D view now. We'll just be drawing a rectangle up from there. And that is the profile. This is the path. This is the profile. However high it is. Say okay.
Okay, again.
Method sweep. How would you model this? Forget the front. I think it's 2 parts. I mean, I think this is one piece that's an extrusion of that shape, sort of coffin shaped. This will be different because it's 2 really quite different parts.
Let's just save the roll of duct tape as family 4.
I go to File, New, family. Yeah, it's entourage. It's just stuff on the desk. And I can draw this flat, just the orange part, and then rotate it up. Let's do that. That's a good exercise. I'm just going to guess how big this is, 4 inches high and 2 inches wide. Create extrusion. Oh, that's really a lot too big, isn't it? I'm just going to pretend that that's symmetrical. Mirror those about the line there. Mirror these two around the line there. Use trim to close those up. And make the whole thing, let's call it 1 inch thick. 1 inch. Okay. Now let's look at it in 3D. Okay, the problem is this guy's lying down flat and I want it to be standing up. But it's right now it's drawn on that floor plane and it's locked to that. So we need to dissociate it from that work plane, select it. And if you remember, we picked this guy, which dissociates this object from its work plane. And then I want to get into and now you can do anything, rotate, lift, fly. Let's get into a left view where I can pick the rotate command. And then move it from here to here. So there's a little guy, cute, 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 cute. So how do I draw this on top of that? It's not a void.
I need to add the microphone shield here on the top.
Well, it's actually sort of an interesting shape. You know, if I want to get this roundy stuff, that really needs to be part of a revolve to do that. So let's say it's 1 inch high and 1 inch across. I'll make it down the ground. We can move it around. We should make it right here. Create an extrusion. Set the work plane to here, to there. Draw a circle from the end of there to there. Okay, and do that.
We could have modeled the microphone shield with a rounded revolve to get the bevels at the top and bottom, but let me show you how to use a void sweep to round off pretty much any edge.
So create void sweep. I'm going to pick the path, which is that and that. That's the shape. This is a void, remember. So I'm going to, let's see. Okay, that was the edges. Now I need to modify sweep. Edit the profile, the thing that we're cutting off there, which will be, let's say that goes 1/4 inch that way, and 1/4 inch that way. And then I want to draw an arc. That's not right.
Make sure they're both the same length.
There we go. So then that's a void we're going to spin around just like chamfering off the edge of that thing. See if this works. Yeah. Yeah. What fun. Haven't had to do that for a while, but there you go.
So there's certainly more that can be done to this. Bevel the bottom of the microphone shield, round off the edges of the extrusion, add the buttons, but close enough for demonstration purposes.
One last thing, got to show you. Let's get into my 3D view. When you place it, we made it on that reference plane, so it's just down on the floor. We select it and say, no, it's 3 feet off the floor. On top of the climber. Okay, so there we go. Jimmy, you like that? That's Shift W,
The navigation wheel.
which brings up this guy. And then on rewind, you can go back and look at your previous views, which is really nice when something like this happens. Like, where am I? And it's just for that view. It's not going to do it for all of them, but just what I was saying here.
It doesn't regress the model in time.
It's like the current state of the model seen from those previous places. It's not taking us back in time. That comes later. Okay, that's all I got.